Touchdown, buzzer beater, do it all now. All now, top corner talking home run. Touchdown, buzzer beater, do it all now. All now, top corner like ooh.
All right. Hello, everybody. It is Monday, February 24th, 2025. This is the Monday Report, and I'm your host, H. James K. Today, we have two shorter topics to discuss. Normal episodes will have one subject, but in a case like today, where I have two shorter subjects, we'll combine them together. Most episodes, the overwhelming majority, won't be like this, but it didn't feel right turning these two shorter subjects into two separate 7-minute long videos. So, last week, I said we would be talking about the NFL Combine today, but the sports gods told me on Thursday, hey, you need to talk about this hockey thing. So before we get to the NFL Combine preview, we're going to talk about the four Nations Faceoff. The United States and Canada clashed in a battle of nations for bragging rights. The Canadians looking to stick one to the United States and America, looking to prove that the United States is the dominant hockey power. In the end, Canada proved victorious, defeating the United States 3-2 in overtime because of a Connor McDavid goal. What a brilliant game. I haven't watched hockey in probably 15 years. It's been a long time. And I will say it is arguably the best hockey game I've ever watched. I'm an American, so obviously I wanted the United States to win the game, which didn't happen. But still, what a brilliant game that was. The thing I loved the most about it was the effort. One of my least favorite things about hockey, back when I used to watch hockey a lot more, was regular season hockey would have such low effort sometimes where it would be kind of boring. Whereas playoff hockey would have insane dedication and super high intense gameplay. This international tournament of sorts had such intense effort from everybody involved that it felt grander than a normal hockey game. And I found that absolutely breathtaking to watch. High effort hockey, high stakes hockey is some of the best sport you can watch. Right up there with the final 10 laps of the Indianapolis 500 or overtime in the Super Bowl. As for the game itself, as I mentioned, Connor McDavid scored the game-winning goal for the Canadians. He didn't play great for the first two periods. Both teams really struggled to get into a rhythm offensively. Excellent defense played on both sides, but in the third period and in overtime, Connor McDavid for the Canadians really started finding his groove and really took over the game late, which was really impressive to see. It just further drove home the point that Connor McDavid is the best hockey player in the world. Hands down, bar none, end of the discussion. Beyond Connor McDavid, the other big takeaway I had was the Tkachuk brothers. Brady and Matthew. Boy, those two are great. It was really great watching those two together. And one of the really sad things about the last game was the fact that Matthew Tkachuk didn't get to play about the second half of the entire game and overtime. The United States was much better when Matthew Tkachuk was on the ice, but Brady Tkachuk played out of his dang mind. He played at a superhuman level for the majority of that game to claw the United States through that game to keep the Stars and Stripes in that game. Ultimately, his efforts were in vain, but you can't knock the kid for an outstanding effort. Jordan Binnington, the goalie for the Canadians, what an incredible game he had. His third period and especially in overtime, the United States had 15 shots on goal in a very short amount of time, and he had 6 saves. It was some of the best goaltending I've watched in a long time. It was absolutely incredible. And because I'm a bit of a casual when it comes to hockey, I kept seeing that Jordan Binnington isn't one of the NHL's best goalies, which blows my mind because he played out of his dang mind. He was absolutely brilliant in the end. Ultimately, though, the end result of the game, as I said, was a Canadian win. USA Hockey continues to lose best-on-best tournaments, whether that is in Olympic, hockey, or otherwise. The United States has not won a best-on-best tournament since 1996. Jeez, 29 years. Woof. There isn't really much to say other than whatever secret sauce the United States has to have to pull out that W, they need to go and find it, because losing best-on-best international tournaments, this sucks. Beyond the United States' continued losing streak, the NHL must do the Four Nations Faceoff again. This was done in place of the NHL All-Star Game. And the NHL All-Star Game, much like every other All-Star Game or Pro Bowl, they lack effort because players don't want to get hurt and there's nothing at stake. The amount of effort shown by the players in this tournament was so amazing. It made hockey worth watching. It made non-regular season, non-playoff hockey worth watching. And the NHL get rid of the All-Star Game. Screw the All-Star Game. Do the Four Nations Face-Off every single year. The tension, the passion, the amount of headlines this thing got for the NHL. You cannot tell me this wasn't a huge boon for the NHL. It had to be, because I don't watch hockey, and I was like, I'm going to watch the Four Nations Face-Off. That's how big this thing was. People who I've never even seen talk about hockey were like, oh, I got to watch the Four Nations Championship tonight. It's one of these things where the entire sports world was watching hockey on Thursday. It was incredible. Assuming the NHL isn't stupid and does this again next year, Team USA will obviously be looking for payback. Hopefully next year they'll get to vanquish the Canadians and win one for Uncle Sam. Either way, the All-Star Game is dead. Long live the Four Nations Face-Off. All right, next up we're going to talk about the NFL Combine. The 3 days of interviews, position drills, and rumors. We are going to preview a selection of players at various positions to watch out for during the 3 days of drills. And these players, some will be the headliners at their position, while others will be much more underrated, under-the-radar kind of players to look out for. So first of all, we're going to start at the position that everybody cares about, quarterback. A player to look out for is Jackson Dart. He played for Ole Miss under Lane Kiffin, and Lane Kiffin's offenses are very much college offenses, so it'll be interesting to see how his game actually translates to the NFL. As a player, Jackson Dart had underrated arm strength. No one really talked about his physical attributes, and he's very, very athletic. He had great numbers. He had 4,000 plus yards, 29 passing touchdowns with Ole Miss. Though he did not have as much success in the SEC as one would like, but then again, he was playing against teams like Alabama and Georgia. I expect him to throw at the Combine. It's in his best interest to throw because while some others might not, he has a little more ground to make up in impressing scouts if he wants to improve his draft stock and possibly bump Shedeur Sanders of Colorado or Cam Ward of Miami out of those top two quarterback spots. Otherwise, he will be the third quarterback taken off the board. Moving on to the running back position, there are a couple of players that I think you should watch out for. First of all, Amorian Hampton, who played running back for UNC. This is a guy who nobody talked about. Everyone talked about Donovan Edwards and especially Ashton Genty of Boise State. But no one really talked about Amorian Hampton. The dude is super, super slept on. He had crazy good production. And he has an excellent combination of speed and power. He was a great cornerstone of Chip Lindsey's offense for the Tar Heels this last season, though they didn't find much success because their defense was a vague notion. Other than Amorian Hampton, another running back to think about is Caleb Johnson, who played for Iowa. Now, Iowa is allergic to the forward pass. They break out in hives if the quarterback even thinks about not handing the ball off. So their offense was obviously extremely limited, but Caleb Johnson was a bruiser for Iowa, and he was extremely productive in all of his years at Iowa. And his brand of tough running power, I don't think he'll be an every down back because we don't really know how he'll be in the pass catching department. That'll be a thing for him to really display at the combine and all the catching drills and in like the 10-yard shuttle and all those different running and agility drills. But as like a short yardage back, I would not be surprised if he has some takers in the draft. So look for him to really make a statement at the combine. Moving on to wide receiver, first one to look out for is Alec Ayomanor, who played for Stanford. This dude, his real claim to fame is the absolute insane game he had in 2023 against Colorado, where Travis Hunter couldn't stop him. Travis Hunter and Shiloh Sanders just could not stop him. He did absolutely everything he wanted while he willed Stanford back into that game, and Stanford ended up coming back from a huge deficit and winning the game against Colorado in 2023. And Alec Ayomanor had a huge role to play in that. He was obviously very underrated because he played for Stanford, and Stanford doesn't do anything in college football anymore. But look for him to test surprisingly well at the combine. He's not one of these people who's known for really great route running, and his hands aren't like super wow catching ability, but he might surprise a lot of people at the combine, as some of these mid-pack wide receivers tend to do. So look out for him. Another wide receiver to really think about is Emeka Egbuka. Now, I know what everyone's going to say. Emeka Egbuka was a superstar, crazy OSU wide receiver, but in actuality, if you really think about it, compared to Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka was slept on. He was much more of a possession receiver, much more of a kind of less flashy, just do the tough things kind of wide receiver. In the NFL, I have a feeling his game is going to translate very much to an Amon-Ra St. Brown kind of beat the zone coverage, live and die in the slot position kind of wide receiver. Do I think he'll be that like superstar like Amon-Ra? Maybe, maybe not, but I think that's where his game is really going to live. All right, moving on from the fun offensive positions, we got to talk about a big man up front, LSU tackle Will Campbell. He played right tackle at college. I think he'll probably move to left tackle, much like Penei Sewell did when he was coming out of college. He is definitely going to be the first offensive lineman taken off the board, even though he's usually 2 or 3 or even 4 on most people's draft big boards. Look for him to really show off his athleticism and his pass blocking technique. Moving on from the offensive side of the ball, we got 2 players to talk about at the edge position. First of all, there's Abdul Carter, who only played edge for 1 season at Penn State, but the dude was an absolute game wrecker. He was huge for the Penn State Nittany Lions this year and keeping their defense in a lot of games. He is crazy athletic. Do not be surprised if he blows scouts away with his agility and speed, definitely his 40 time at the combine. All right, other than Abdul Carter, there's Mike Green. Mike Green started his college career at UAB, which is the University of Alabama, Birmingham, before transferring to Marshall. He had an excellent season with Marshall this last season, recording 17 sacks on the year, which is absolutely insane for college. By comparison, Abdul Carter had 7.5, I believe. So that tells you how productive Mike Green was. He had a great Senior Bowl, and many are projecting him to actually be drafted by the Detroit Lions. Do not be surprised if he has an excellent showing at the NFL Combine. Lastly, we got to move on to the defensive back position. Now, Will Johnson from the University of Michigan came into the year regarded as the best corner in the country, and he was going to be blah, blah, blah. But he had an underwhelming season. He struggled early on in the year adapting to Wink Martindale's version of the 4-2-5 amoeba defense that Michigan's been running since 2021. Will Johnson was okay in coverage for Wink Martindale. Wink Martindale had to learn how to call college defenses versus NFL defenses, and really it took him a long time to learn that he didn't have to call as exotic of looks as he did in the NFL. So there were a lot of times where Will Johnson would make mistakes or be out of position, though he often made up for it. So that was the first half of his year, and then in the second half of the year, he had a toe injury, a lingering turf toe injury that kept him out of the second half of the year. And I think because of how down his year was at the University of Michigan, considering Michigan was 8-5 this year with a bowl win, I would not be surprised if Will Johnson comes into the combine determined to make a splash and reassert his position as the best defensive back in the draft. So look out for him. Overall, I think it's going to be an excellent NFL combine. I love watching the NFL combine every year. I always get a kick out of Rich Eisen's Run Rich Run campaign where he attempts the 40-yard dash to raise money for charity. All right, next week, for the episode on March 3rd, we will be talking about Sunday's IndyCar Series race at St. Petersburg down in Florida. We will also be talking about the Formula One season coming up, which will be a preview and predictions for the up-and-coming Formula One season. All right, that'll do it for today. I'm your host, H. James K. Until next time.